from abroad today. And basically I'm going to talk very quickly about what's going on with your consumers, what are the big trends. And obviously I'm going to be food focused because that's the nature of my role. But these trends influence every single industry. These are influencing the consumers that you're selling to, and you need to think about what is your business doing to prepare yourself for dealing with those trends and dealing with that consumer who is changing very, very rapidly. Okay, thank you, Rob. So I'm going to talk very quickly about the global dynamics, and basically what I'm talking about there is the social trends, the political trends, and the technological trends that we're seeing happening with our consumers. So the main thing is the shift in the economic power balance. So despite the slowdown, China is still the number 2 market that's there in the world. It's still a huge economy for us. India is now 10th in terms of world. So we're seeing a huge change in consumer dynamics over to the east. So in 2010, I think it was, about 1/4 of all middle-income households were based in Asia. So 1 in 4 of our consumers. By 2020, we're expecting half of the middle-income households to be based in Asia. And the OECD is saying that's even going to grow, that by 2030, 2/3 of your customers potentially are going to be based in Asia. So you need to make sure that you are communicating to those people in a culturally sensitive way, because the way they're going to shop and think is completely different from the way your established customers are shopping. And you also need to make sure you have that route to market. Do you have it nailed? Do you have an entrance into Asia? Global urbanisation, and again this is a massive trend in terms of where we're living at the moment. So at the moment we're seeing about half of the world's population living in an urban environment. That's going to increase. So you see there that by 2025, which is not far away, 37 cities will account for 14% of our population. That's absolutely massive. So again, if you think how people in urban environments live, how they shop, it's quite different from rural environments. Now there will be an increase in slums, so not all of those will be your high income families that you're targeting. But at the same time, do you have that right route to market? Are you thinking about the spaces they live in? What are you trying to sell to them? How are they going to shop? How are they going to travel to work? How do your products fit into the lifestyle that they are now living compared to where they were only a few years previously? And aging, which is great news. Our global life expectancy is increasing. It's going up from 69 at the moment, up to about 76 is what we're expecting. And in developed countries, that's going to be 83. So big growth in terms of older people who become a much bigger part of our dynamic that we're now selling to. So what are you selling to those people? How are you communicating to those people? Are you sure that you're communicating in a way, not all of them will be as technological savvy as some younger people. So again, how are you making sure that you communicate to them in a way that is relevant to them? These people will want to continue to, be part of society. They'll be doing, some will be working because they have to or because they want to, and will be very interested in how to age healthily. So you'll see a big kind of move in terms of diet and exercise for these people, but also in terms of how do you make them sure that they're included socially, and what are your products doing for them? I always like this slide. Sorry, gentlemen, but apparently the future is female, which is good to see. So there are huge inequalities still at the moment in the world. There are about 800 billion people who are illiterate, and 2/3 of those are female. But if we look at the younger demographics, we see it's about 89% literacy rate, and the split between that gender split is very, very small. Also, in women's participation in the labour workforce has also increased massively. And also in higher education, you'll find that in all regions, bar Sub-Sahara Africa and China, women outnumber men in universities and higher universities and in higher education. So that's a massive change in terms of their education, their spending power, and how they shop. So again, what are you doing to make sure that you can fit and be relevant to their lifestyles? And I guess as a kind of almost a factor of that educated, more bigger workforce for women, there's also a change in regular households. So mom, dad and 2.4 kids, gone, housewife, extinct. Think about who you're selling to now, because lifestyles are much more fluid. There are less people getting married. They're tending to get married later if they are. They're more likely to get divorced. There are a lot of people choosing single parenthood. There are a lot of blended families. Families are very, very different. So in terms of your brands and your products, what are you doing to make sure that you feel relevant to them? When they get together as a group or society, how are you making them feel included, those special occasions? What are you doing to service that? And also in terms of, think about who you're now selling your product to. As I said, it's not the housewife doing the shopping, passing around with 2.4 kids, over. So again, think about your consumer and what are you doing in terms of communicating to them. Also in terms of households, one thing I do want to flag is the growth in single occupancy households. So in the developed world, about 30% of households are single occupancy. So again, think about, we always say in food industry, portion size. You know, people before always sold slice pans, 800 gram. If I'm living on my own, what am I going to do with an entire 800 gram loaf of bread? Do you know, so again, think about, how am I selling them? What's the shelf life? What space do they have? How do they want to buy it? How do they want to feel socially included with people around them? So again, have a think about that in terms of your brands. Next two slides, unfortunately, are not good. This one is on increasing economic kind of split. So there is a big polarization. So the rich are unfortunately getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And people are very bitter about it and they're also very aware of it. So we look and we see that about 2% of the world's population now owns more than 50% of the global wealth. And what's even more disturbing is that the richest 10% own over 85% of the world's global wealth. And that is increasing. I think it's important that you think about your corporate social responsibility and how you are not seen as a business that swoops in, does some business and takes money and profit out of that area. How are you part of that community? How do you give something back? How are you transparent in terms of pay, bonuses? What does a consumer feel about you when they think about your brand or you as a company? Do they think that you're just in it for the profit, that you have no soul? Or do they actually relate to you and say, yeah, they make money, but they also do all this other stuff that's good. It makes me feel good about myself when I buy it. So, as I said, second gloom and doom slide, unfortunately, is the rise in global diseases. So we have what we're calling diabesity out there, which is the global epidemic of diabetes and obesity. And unfortunately, seeing it very high in children, but also in adults. It's causing a lot of lifestyle issues. So again, there is a move by a lot of, certainly in the food industry, but also in terms of the technology industry, in terms of helping people to get fitter, but also in terms of people having more awareness in terms of what their products are and what choices they're making. So this will certainly be, if it's not led by the food industry and by other industries, it'll certainly come into regulation. So again, it's something to keep in mind in terms of this trend that's out there. And mobile technology, we certainly can't forget that. I mean, we see in a lot of the world that you can see there that more people have access to a mobile phone than they do to electricity or sanitation, which is quite disturbing in one way. But it's leapfrogged, so they're not going to landlines and then moving on to mobile, they're already in mobile. So what does that mean? It means you can get your message out there to people who previously you weren't able to access. But it also means that they can find out information about you much, much quicker. So are you squeaky clean? Is there going to be something they're going to find about you and your brand and what you're doing in a different market? So again, think about what you're doing in terms of your corporate social responsibility and how you behave, because consumers now have access to that information. So we're also seeing huge changes in what's going on in terms of a sourcing point of view and also in how people are consuming. And we see these trends that are probably a little bit further out, but we're starting to see the edge of those and we're seeing them changing. So there's new buying habits. This is really interesting. This was brought in at the time of the recession. So basically people started deciding what products they loved and what products were just commodities for them. So it's very important that you make sure your products are in the ones they love kind of category. Because what they're doing is they're making very considered purchases. So something I care about, I'm going to spend time researching, investing my time in, and I'm willing to spend my money on. Something I have no emotional attachment with, I just buy the cheapest one wherever I can get it. You don't want to be in that category unless you're very, very efficient in terms of your manufacturing. maybe that's your plan, but don't walk into it. I guess my challenge back is, think about what are you actually going to do in terms of what category do you want to be? How can you get your consumers to like you? Or maybe how can you get your consumers to like you more than your competition in the area that you're in? So consider that. And trust chains are very important. We're seeing it certainly in the food area, but we're seeing it in quite a lot of other categories, whether it's pharma, whether it's in transportation, that consumers are looking for better transparency. So they're looking back down the chain. Who supplies that? Who's doing that? And that again is led on by that whole kind of digital access to be there, and also by scares. But also we're seeing people looking for advice, and they're not looking for advice from you. They're looking for advice from your peers, or a different group, or their peers. So they're looking for that information. So again, it's how do you influence that ring, that when consumers go looking for something, they don't necessarily believe what's on your website, but they will believe what's on maybe let's say a fair trade, or people sometimes use badges to validate what they're actually doing. And health concerns, say health and wellness are huge at the moment. But again, the interesting thing is it's not very much about, it's not just about my physical health, it's also very much about my mental health. It's become really, really popular with people in terms of mindfulness is massive now. So in terms of me, body and spirit, actually being well, and the importance of that. So food is becoming, an incredible part of it, but likewise technology is being used considerably to help people manage it. And a lot of people now are looking for preventative solutions rather than necessarily looking for a curative purpose. And new retail routes. This is something I love challenging people with and going, think about how consumers are shopping now. It's very, very different. It's not the one weekly shop, as I said, in the supermarket trolley. It's certainly not for food. Think about the people who are buying clothes. Think about the travel industry and where it was when you went down to a travel agent not so long ago. Now you do it all online. Now you book and live in someone else's bedroom or spare bedroom, with Airbnb. So it's changed, and consumers are looking for new routes. And they're quite excited about that, and they like that. Aha, I found it before everybody else, and it gives them the bragging rights. So it's nice to be kind of discovered. Obviously, don't be so hidden that you can't be discovered. But it's nice to be discovered by consumers. It's nice to be quirky. It's nice to have something different. So think about that and think about how can I do it. And as I said, digital is a massive way of actually helping people build that kind of loyalty there and that. So it's a really nice and challenging way. So we're seeing huge growth in street food because people like the experience of queuing and buying in a van. Because again, it's part of the whole experience bit rather than just what they're actually consuming. So think about how your consumers can buy as well. Because of challenges in the, let's say, production in terms of sustainability, there is going to be changes in how we need to produce products. So you will need to think about how are you going to evolve. We have an initiative called Origin Green, which is an initiative by the Irish food industry to be sustainable and to make sure that 100% of our suppliers are exporting sustainable products by the end of this year. So it's been a good journey for people in terms of understanding what it is about being sustainable. It needs to be really, really part of your everyday thinking. It needs to be about where am I sourcing from, how am I manufacturing, what is my corporate responsibility. And think about, let's say, how you can evolve that, because as I said, things are only going to become more difficult, and you do need to look at how you can produce your products sustainably. You're not going to be around for very long. And again, this is a trend that we see, expected to see, that we haven't probably get a little bit out, but it's starting already in terms of the whole, maybe eating less meat, the kind of move around vegetarianism that we've seen this year. But about resources becoming more and more scarce, and as a result of that, you're going to see people thinking about what they're consuming a lot more. So it's going to be less about consuming and throwing away, and more about what keep. We're talking an awful lot about reduce, reuse, recycle, and now we're hearing the fourth one, which is all about repair. So that's a really interesting one that's coming in as well. So people want to buy something, hang on to it, and not just chuck it away. So I think that's quite an important one to think about how consumers and how they actually will change. And also I expect we're going to see an awful lot more around regulation on that in terms of what's going to happen in terms of development. So I guess just to conclude is that sustainability is going to make our lives harder initially, but better in the long run, and that's something we absolutely should sign up to and think about. That we have a huge opportunity in terms of all those middle class, high income families that are starting to emerge in different markets. So again, they're a huge opportunity for us. So again, thinking about where am I selling, how am I selling, and how am I going to reach those. And then the need to understand your consumer and really get under their skin, understand how are they shopping, who are they, what are they thinking, and where do they live. That's very, very important and going to become even more important as time goes on. Thank you very much.